The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, they looked up at the night sky and dreamed of what waited beyond. When they finally reached those stars, they found that the universe was not empty. It was full of life, full of ancient civilizations, and full of beings who did not welcome newcomers. The Galactic Council had ruled the known galaxy for 12,000 years. 12 species, 12 voices, one united government that controlled trade, war, and peace across 1,000,000 worlds. They had seen young species rise and fall like waves on a beach. Most learned their place quickly. Some had to be taught. A few had to be erased from existence entirely. When human ships first appeared at the edge of Council space, the ancient powers paid little attention. Humans were primitive. Their ships were ugly boxes of metal that somehow moved through space. Their weapons were crude. Their technology was centuries behind even the youngest Council species. They were, at best, a curiosity. At worst, they were pests. But humans had a strange quality that the Council did not understand at first. They did not know when to stop. They pushed into new territories. They built colonies on worlds that other species had abandoned as worthless. They traded with anyone who would talk to them. They learned, adapted, and grew faster than any species the Council had ever recorded. 50 years after first contact, human ships were everywhere. They were still ugly. They were still crude, but there were so many of them and they kept coming. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the indomitable Earth's largest warship. He was a tall man with hair and calm eyes that had seen too many battles. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, monitoring the empty space around them. They were on patrol near the border of Council territory, a routine mission that should have been boring. It was not boring today. Lieutenant turned from her communications console, her face pale. She was young, barely 30, but she was the best communications officer in the fleet. Right now, she looked like she had seen a ghost. "Admiral," she said, "we are receiving a priority transmission from Nexus Prime. It carries the seal of the High Arbiter." Felt his stomach tighten. The High Arbiter spoke for the entire Galactic Council. A direct message from that office meant something serious was happening. "Put it through," he said. The air in front of him shimmered, and a holographic figure appeared. It was High Arbiter, a being made of shifting silver light. No one knew what truly looked like beneath that glow. The High Arbiter species had evolved beyond physical form long ago. They existed as pure energy, ancient and powerful beyond human understanding. "Admiral Park of the United Earth Coalition," said. The voice was neither male nor female, neither warm nor cold. It simply was. "This message is being sent to all human military commanders and political leaders simultaneously. You will listen. You will not interrupt." Said nothing. Around him, his crew had stopped working. Every eye was on the glowing figure. "The Galactic Council has observed humanity's expansion with growing concern," continued. "Your species breeds too quickly. You consume too many resources. You spread to worlds that were reserved for future Council use. This cannot continue." The silver light pulsed brighter for a moment. "The Council has voted. Humanity will surrender all military vessels to Council control within one standard cycle. You will dismantle your shipyards. You will accept protectorate status under Council governance. Your expansion will end. Your population growth will be regulated. You will learn your place among the stars." Lieutenant made a small sound of disbelief, held up his hand to silence her. "You may believe you can resist," said. "You cannot. The Council commands fleets that number in the hundreds of thousands. We have weapons that can crack planets. We have technologies you cannot imagine, but we prefer to avoid such waste." The hologram shifted, showing an image that made blood run cold. It was Earth. Beautiful blue Earth hanging in space like a precious jewel. "We know where your is," said. "We know its exact location, its defenses, its weaknesses. More importantly, we are prepared to share this information with every hostile faction in the galaxy. The Ravager clans, the Machine Collective, the Silence, all of them would love to know where humanity keeps its eggs. The image of Earth disappeared, replaced by its glowing form. One world, Admiral. Your entire species depends on one fragile world. Surrender now, accept Council protection, and Earth will be safe. Refuse, and we will let the galaxy know exactly where to find you. The choice is yours. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Stood very still for a long moment. His mind was racing, but his face showed nothing. He had learned long ago that a commander must never show fear, even when fear was the only reasonable response. Admiral said quietly, "What do we do?" Turned to face his crew. They were looking at him with a mixture of fear and anger and desperate hope. They needed him to be strong. They needed him to have answers. "We do what humans have always done when someone threatens our home," he said. His voice was steady. "We fight back." He walked to the central command console and opened a secure channel. "Get me a direct line to the Unified Earth Council," he ordered. "Priority Alpha, wake up everyone who matters. And someone contact Director Han at Intelligence. Tell her the situation has changed." "What situation, sir?" an ensign asked. Looked out at the stars through the main viewport. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was waiting for humanity to bow down. They expected surrender. They expected fear. They expected humans to be like every other young species they had crushed over 12,000 years. They were about to learn that humans were different. "The situation where we show the galaxy what happens when you try to blackmail Earth," said. "The Council thinks they hold all the cards. They think we are weak because we are young. They think we will break because they threaten our home." He turned back to his crew, and for the first time he allowed himself to smile. It was not a pleasant smile. "They have made a very serious mistake, and we are going to make sure they understand exactly how serious." The Indomitable turned toward Earth, its engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Behind it, the stars watched in silence, waiting to see what humanity would do next. The countdown had begun. Nexus Prime was the heart of galactic civilization. It was not a planet but a station, built over 8,000 years by the combined effort of every Council species. It floated in the exact center of known space, a monument to cooperation and power. Its towers stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction, glittering with lights from a million windows. Ships from every corner of the galaxy docked at its ports, bringing trade, diplomacy, and tribute. At the very center of Nexus Prime sat the Council chamber. It was a room made of living crystal that grew and changed with each passing century. The walls shifted between colors that most species could not even see. The air itself hummed with ancient power. Here, the 12 representatives of the Galactic Council made decisions that shaped the lives of trillions. Today, they were discussing humanity. Ambassador of the sat in his designated alcove, his body clicking with satisfaction. There were ancient conquerors. They had crushed 17 species into slavery over the past 10,000 years. Their empire stretched across 3 spiral arms, and their warrior hives numbered in the billions. Had never liked humans. They reminded him too much of a pest species his ancestors had exterminated long ago. Small, soft, breeding too quickly, spreading everywhere like a disease. "The humans will fold," announced, his mandibles clicking with each word. "They always protect their young, their elderly, their weak. It is their greatest flaw. Show them a threat to their and they will kneel." Several representatives made sounds of agreement. Of the meridian depths floated in her water-filled sphere, her bioluminescent body pulsing with soft blue light. Her species lived in the crushing depths of ocean worlds, where pressure would kill most other beings instantly. They were patient, thoughtful, and absolutely certain of their own superiority. "Their emotional attachments make them predictable," bubbled through her translation device. "We have studied their history. They form bonds with everything. Their offspring, their mates, their pets, even their machines. They cannot help themselves. This weakness will be their undoing. High Arbiter pulsed with silver light at the center of the chamber. The ancient being had overseen council affairs for 300 years. In all that time, had never seen a young species resist the council's will for long. The enforcement fleet is being assembled, announced. 3,000 warships from 6 species, enough firepower to reduce Earth to molten glass if necessary. The humans will see reason when they understand what they face. The chamber hummed with approval. 3,000 ships was more than enough to crush any resistance. It was, in fact, far more than necessary. But the council believed in making examples. Only one voice did not join the chorus of confidence. Observer of the Quiet Ones raised a single tendril from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. Species rarely spoke in council meetings. They preferred to watch, to record, to analyze. They had been doing so for longer than any other species could remember. "Permission to speak," said. The voice was soft, almost a whisper. Turn toward the shadowed alcove. The observer is recognized. Moved forward slightly, enough for the other representatives to see the pale, eyeless face beneath the hood. The Quiet Ones had no eyes. They did not need them. They saw through other means. "We have studied human history extensively," said. "More extensively than any other species has bothered to study them. We have read their stories. We have analyzed their wars. We have examined their patterns of behavior." Ambassador clicked impatiently. "And what does your study tell you, observer?" "It tells us that emotional attachment does not make humans surrender," replied. "It makes them fight harder. Their history is filled with examples of humans who fought to the death to protect what they loved. They burned their own cities rather than let enemies capture them. They starved themselves rather than abandon their homes. They flew primitive aircraft into enemy ships when they had no other weapons left." The chamber grew quiet. "Threatening there will not make them kneel," continued. "It will make them desperate. And desperate humans are the most dangerous creatures we have ever observed." Bubbled dismissively. "You give them too much credit. They are young. They have never faced a true galactic power. They have no idea what the Council can do." "Perhaps," said. "Or perhaps the Council has no idea what humans can do when they believe they have nothing left to lose." High Arbiter waved a tendril of silver light, ending the discussion. "The observer's concerns are noted. However, the Council has voted. The ultimatum has been delivered. The humans will comply or face destruction. It is that simple." Retreated back into the shadows without another word. The Quiet Ones had said their piece. They always did, and as always, the other species ignored them. The Council moved on to other business. Trade disputes, border conflicts, the usual matters of galactic governance. The human situation was considered closed. They would surrender within the cycle, and that would be the end of it. None of them noticed that certain communications channels had been slightly more active than usual over the past few hours. None of them realized that human intelligence operatives had been watching and listening from hidden positions throughout the station. None of them suspected that Director Han, the head of Earth's intelligence division, had been awake for 36 hours straight, pulling together every piece of information her network had gathered over 20 years of patient observation. The Council was confident in their power. They had crushed young species before. They would crush this one too. But somewhere in the shadows of Nexus Prime, a human operative sent a coded message back to Earth. It contained everything the Council had discussed, every ship count, every strategic plan, every weakness they had accidentally revealed in their arrogance. Director Han read the report in her underground office beneath Seoul. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and streaked hair. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. "They think they know us," she said quietly to herself. "They think they understand what we are capable of." She began typing orders to her operatives scattered across the galaxy. Activation codes, contingency plans, assets that had been sleeping for decades, waiting for the day they would be needed. They have no idea. The Council had given humanity one cycle to respond. They expected fear and surrender. They were going to get something very different. The game had only just begun. The exodus began quietly, so quietly that no one noticed at first. On the trading world of, a human merchant named closed his shop without warning. He had sold electronics to the local population for 15 years. He knew everyone in the district. He had friends, regular customers, beings who considered him almost family. One morning his shop was simply empty. No note, no explanation, just silence. On the industrial moon of Sector 7, 32 human engineers resigned from the corporation on the same day. They cited personal reasons, family emergencies, health concerns. Their supervisors were confused but not concerned. Humans came and went. That was their nature. On medical stations across the galaxy, human doctors finished treating their current patients, then quietly booked passage on ships heading toward Earth. They apologized to their colleagues. They promised to return someday. They never did. Within 3 days, over 2 million humans had vanished from galactic society. Ambassador received the report in his private quarters on Nexus Prime. His compound eyes scanned the data with growing contempt. "They are running," he announced to his aides, "fleeing back to their little world like frightened insects. This proves what I have always said. Humans are cowards at heart." His aides clicked their agreement. The respected only strength. Running from danger was the ultimate sign of weakness. But was wrong. The humans were not running away from danger. They were running towards something else entirely. 3 kilometers beneath the surface of Sol, President stood before the largest gathering of human leaders in history. The bunker was massive, carved from solid rock and reinforced with materials that could survive a direct nuclear strike. It had been built in secret over 40 years, funded by hidden budgets, and constructed by workers who believed they were building emergency shelters. 400 people filled the chamber: presidents, prime ministers, generals, admirals, scientists, intelligence directors, colony governors. Every human who mattered was either present in person or connected by secure communication. President was a woman in her early 60s with silver hair and eyes that could freeze water. She had been a soldier before she was a politician. She had fought in the Mars Uprising and the Belt Conflict. She knew what war looked like, and she was not afraid of it. "The Council believes they hold the ultimate threat over us," she said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. "They know where Earth is. They can tell our enemies. They can destroy our." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "They believe this makes us weak. They believe we have put all our eggs in one basket." She pressed a control on her podium, and the air above the assembly filled with light. Not one point of light, but thousands. They spread across a holographic map of the galaxy like scattered diamonds. "They are wrong." The assembly stirred. Many of them were seeing this information for the first time. "For 60 years, since before we even made first contact with alien life, humanity has been preparing for this moment," President continued. "We knew that the universe would not be kind to us. We knew that we would meet species older than us, stronger than us, species that would see us as prey." She pointed to the points of light. "These are our hidden colonies, hollowed asteroids, secret stations in empty systems, generation ships that left Earth decades ago and are still traveling to destinations no alien has ever heard of, underwater bases, underground cities. Humanity is not one world. We are thousands of worlds, and the Council does not know about any of them." General stepped forward. He was a large man with a face and hands that had killed in close combat. He commanded Earth's military forces, both the ones the galaxy knew about and the ones it did not. "The Council has counted 300 human warships," he said. "They believe this is our entire fleet. They are wrong." Another display appeared, showing ship schematics and deployment maps. We have 1,200 additional vessels hidden in systems that do not appear on any Council star chart. They are not as large as Council warships. They are not as elegant, but they are fast, they are deadly, and they have been waiting for this day. The assembly began to murmur. Hope was replacing fear in their eyes. But President was not finished. She nodded to Director Han, who stepped out of the shadows at the edge of the chamber. The intelligence director looked exhausted. She had not slept in 3 days, but her eyes burned with fierce satisfaction. For 20 years my operatives have been mapping Council space, said. We have infiltrated their communications networks. We have placed observers on there. We have studied their defenses, their supply lines, their weaknesses. She activated her own display. 12 worlds appeared, each one marked with detailed tactical information. These are the Council species, every one of them. We know their population centers. We know their critical infrastructure. We know which targets would cripple their civilizations if destroyed. She looked at the assembly with cold eyes. The Council threatened to reveal Earth's location to our enemies. They do not realize that we already know where their homes are. We have known for 15 years. We simply never told them. The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. President raised her hand, and silence returned. We are not going to surrender, she said. We are not going to become a protectorate. We are not going to let the Council dictate humanity's future. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every leader present. But we are also not going to start a war we do not need to fight. The Council has made a mistake. They have assumed we are weak because we are young. We are going to correct that assumption. She turned to a corner of the chamber, where a single figure sat in shadow. Ambassador O, please step forward. An elderly man rose from his seat. He moved slowly with a slight limp from an old injury. His hair was completely white and his face was lined with 70 years of life. He looked like someone's grandfather. He looked harmless. He was the most dangerous human in the room. Ambassador O will deliver our response to the Council, President announced. He will go alone. He will go unarmed. And he will make them understand exactly what kind of species they are dealing with. O bowed slightly to the assembly. I was a teacher for 30 years before I became a diplomat, he said. His voice was soft but clear. I have learned that the best lessons are the ones students never forget. He smiled, and there was something sharp behind that gentle expression. The Council is about to receive a very memorable lesson. The human ship that approached Nexus Prime was small and ugly. It was a standard diplomatic shuttle, designed for comfort rather than combat. It had no weapons. Its shields were barely strong enough to stop space debris. A single fighter could have destroyed it in seconds. Ambassador O sat alone in the passenger compartment, watching the great station grow larger through the viewport. He had refused all offers of escorts, guards, and protection. He wanted the Council to see exactly what humanity thought of their threats. One old man, one unarmed ship, walking straight into the heart of galactic power. Either humanity was insane, or they knew something the Council did not. High Arbiter had agreed to receive the human ambassador personally. It was unusual. Normally, surrender documents were handled by lower officials, but was curious. The humans had not behaved as expected. They had not panicked. They had not begged for mercy. They had simply gone quiet. Quiet made nervous. The Council chamber was full when entered. All 12 representatives had gathered to witness humanity's submission. Ambassador was practically vibrating with anticipation, floated smugly in her sphere. Even Observer had emerged from the shadows to watch. Walked slowly to the center of the chamber. His limp was more noticeable than usual. The journey had been hard on his old bones, but his eyes were clear and his back was straight. He carried nothing but a small data device in his pocket. Ambassador O of the United Earth Coalition announced, You have come to deliver your species' response to the Council's ultimatum. I have replied. His voice was calm, almost pleasant. You accept our terms. You will surrender your military vessels and accept protectorate status. Smiled. It was a kind smile, the sort a teacher might give to a student who had asked a foolish question. No. The chamber went silent. Ambassador stopped clicking, stopped bubbling. Even silver light seemed to dim for a moment. I'm sorry, said. Did you say no? I did, reached into his pocket and pulled out the small data device. I have come to deliver humanity's actual response, if you will permit me. Made a gesture of approval, too surprised to refuse. Activated the device. The chamber's display systems flickered, then filled with images. The first was a world covered in massive hive cities, its atmosphere thick with industrial smoke. The said pleasantly, population 47 billion, primary industries, manufacturing and military production, critical infrastructure, the 17 hive queens who control all reproduction, current locations of all 17 queens, known. Made a sound like breaking glass, his compound eyes fixed on with murderous intensity. The image changed. Now it showed an ocean world, its surface broken only by floating platforms and the tips of underwater towers. The meridian continued. Population 12 billion, primary energy source, thermal vents in the southern trench. Defense network controlled from 3 command centers at depths of 4, 7, and 11 kilometers. We have detailed maps of all 3. Sphere began to bubble violently. One by one, displayed every council species. He named populations. He identified weaknesses. He pointed out critical targets that, if destroyed, would cripple entire civilizations. 12 worlds, 12 species, 12 sets of secrets that should have been impossible for humans to know. When he finished, the chamber was completely silent. These are not threats, said. His voice remained calm and friendly. I want to be very clear about that. These are simply facts. You showed us that you know where Earth is. We are showing you that knowledge flows in both directions. He turned off the display and put the device back in his pocket. You can destroy Earth, he acknowledged. Perhaps. Our defenses might surprise you, but let's assume your enforcement fleet succeeds. Let's assume you kill 8 billion humans. He paused, letting the number hang in the air. That leaves 4 billion more, scattered across the galaxy in places you will never find. Hidden colonies, secret stations, generation ships traveling to destinations you cannot imagine, and those 4 billion survivors will have only one purpose for the rest of their existence. He looked at each representative in turn. His eyes were no longer those of a kind old teacher. They were the eyes of something harder, something that had survived a universe trying to kill it. They will make sure every species that participated in Earth's destruction understands the price. Your colonies, your trade routes, your children and your children's children. Humans are very good at holding grudges. We have had a lot of practice. Ambassador finally found his voice. You are bluffing. You cannot have this information. Our security is absolute. Turned to face the ambassador. 3 years ago, your third queen's favorite attendant died in what appeared to be an accident. She was replaced by a new attendant who came highly recommended by a trading partner. That attendant is human. She has been reporting to us ever since. Made a choking sound. We have similar assets in every council species government, continued. Some have been in place for over a decade. We are patient. We plan ahead. We do not forget. He reached into his pocket again and produced a data chip, which he placed on the central table. This contains our counter-proposal, full council membership, equal voting rights, mutual defense treaties, recognition of all human territories, including the ones you did not know existed. In exchange, we will share our intelligence network's findings with the council, help improve your collective security, and become productive partners in galactic civilization. He stepped back from the table. Or you can reject this proposal. You can send your enforcement fleet. You can try to destroy Earth and hunt down every last human in the galaxy. His smile returned, but now it was sharp enough to cut. But I promise you this, even if you win, you will lose more than you can imagine. Humans do not die quietly. We do not surrender gracefully. When we go down, we take our enemies with us. It is in our nature. He turned and began walking toward the exit, his limp somehow less noticeable than before. You have one cycle to respond. He paused at the doorway and looked back over his shoulder. Choose wisely. Then he was gone, and the council was left staring at each other in the sudden silence. The data chip sat on the table between them, waiting. Observer was the first to speak. I tried to warn you, the quiet one said softly. Humans do not know how to surrender. They never have. They never will. The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted at each other. Accusations flew. Ancient alliances cracked under the weight of sudden fear. And somewhere in the void, O's shuttle began its long journey home. The old man sat in the passenger compartment, looking out at the stars, and allowed himself to laugh. It was a good laugh, the laugh of a teacher who had just delivered the most important lesson of his career. Class was in session, and the council was finally learning. The council chamber had never seen such chaos. For 3 days, the 12 representatives argued, threatened, and accused each other of failures that had led to this moment. Ancient alliances that had lasted for cracked under the pressure of sudden fear. Ambassador demanded immediate military action. The way was simple. When threatened, strike first and strike hard. He called for the enforcement fleet to launch immediately, to burn Earth before humanity could act on their threats. They are bluffing, he insisted, his mandibles clicking furiously. They must be bluffing. No young species could have infiltrated our security so deeply. But even as he spoke, reports were arriving from the 3 of the 17 hive queens were demanding answers. How did the humans know their locations? How had this breach happened? Who was responsible? The 3rd queen's favorite attendant had disappeared. She had simply walked out of the hive palace and vanished. A search of her quarters revealed communications equipment that should not have existed. She had been reporting to human intelligence for 3 years. Stopped demanding action and started demanding explanations. Was equally disturbed. An investigation of the Meridian command centers revealed unauthorized data transfers that had been occurring for over a decade. The leak had been so subtle, so patient, that no one had noticed. Human intelligence agents had been watching the Meridian for years. One by one, every council species began finding similar problems. Human operatives, compromised systems, secrets that should have been impossible to steal, stolen anyway. The humans had been watching, they had been waiting, and no one had known. On the 3rd day, Observer addressed the council once more. The quiet one moved to the center of the chamber, demanding attention through sheer presence. We have studied human history for decades, said. Allow me to share what we have learned. The display systems activated, showing images from Earth's past. Burning cities, armies clashing, ships sinking in vast oceans, mushroom clouds rising over ruined landscapes. Humans have been at war with each other since before they developed writing, explained. They have fought over territory, over resources, over ideas, over insults that happened generations before the fighters were born. They have killed each other in numbers that dwarf the populations of entire council species. The images changed. Soldiers charging into certain death, civilians refusing to flee burning cities, pilots flying damaged aircraft into enemy vessels, prisoners of war who endured years of torture without breaking. But here is what matters, continued. When humans are threatened by an outside force, they stop fighting each other. They unite. They become something else entirely, something that does not stop until the threat is destroyed or they are dead. The display showed the old human ambassador, O, walking into the council chamber. This man was a teacher, said. He spent 30 years helping young humans learn. He was not a soldier. He was not a spy. He was simply an old man with a limp and a kind smile. And yet he walked into this chamber alone, faced all 12 species of the Galactic Council, and told us that we had made a terrible mistake. Turned to face the assembly. He was not afraid. None of them are afraid. That is what we failed to understand. Humans do not respond to threats with fear. They respond with preparation. They respond with patience. They respond with a willingness to sacrifice everything to protect what they love. The Quiet One's eyeless face swept across the chamber. The question before this council is simple. Is destroying humanity worth the cost? Even if we win, even if we burn every human world and hunt down every hidden colony, how many of us will survive? How many of our worlds will burn in return? How many generations will pass before humans stop seeking revenge? No one spoke. They have shown us that they can reach our, concluded. They have shown us that they have been watching us for decades. They have shown us that they will not surrender, no matter what we threaten. The only question left is whether we are wise enough to accept their offer of partnership instead of making them our eternal enemies. The vote came the next morning. It was not unanimous. Ambassador voted against acceptance. So did 2 other species who could not accept that a young civilization had outmaneuvered them so completely. But the majority prevailed. High Arbiter appeared in a holographic transmission to the Indomitable, where Admiral Park waited with his crew. The Galactic Council recognizes the United Earth Coalition as a full member species, announced. Each word seemed to cause physical pain. With all rights and responsibilities thereof, your counter-proposal is accepted. Admiral nodded, keeping his face carefully neutral. Behind him, Lieutenant allowed herself a small smile. We accept, said, and we look forward to a productive partnership. The transmission ended. The bridge crew finally allowed themselves to breathe. Someone laughed. Someone else started crying with relief. Looked at her admiral. Do you think they will ever forgive us? Gazed out at the stars through the main viewport. For 50 years, humanity had struggled for acceptance in a galaxy that saw them as primitives, pests, and prey. Now they had a seat at the table with the oldest civilizations in existence. No, he said honestly, they will not forgive us. We embarrassed them. We showed them that they were not as powerful as they believed. That kind of wound does not heal. He turned to face his crew. But they will respect us. They will fear us at least a little. And in this galaxy, respect and fear will keep us alive longer than forgiveness ever could. The news spread across human space like wildfire. On Earth, crowds filled the streets of every major city. On Mars and the Belt colonies, celebrations lasted for days. On the hidden stations and secret worlds that the Council still did not know about, humans raised quiet toasts to the success of a plan that had been decades in the making. President addressed humanity in a broadcast that reached every human settlement, known and hidden alike. Today we have secured our future, she said, not through war, not through surrender, but through strength, preparation, and the willingness to look our enemies in the eye and refuse to blink. The Galactic Council learned what happens when you try to blackmail humanity. I hope no one else ever has to learn that lesson. 50 years later, humanity had become something the galaxy never expected. Not conquerors, not victims, not servants. They became mediators, traders, explorers, and reluctant warriors. When disputes arose between council species, humans were often called to negotiate. When new species were discovered, humans were sent to make first contact. When threats emerged from the unknown reaches of space, human fleets were often first to respond. They had earned their place among the stars, not by being the strongest, not by being the oldest, but by being the species that refused to give up no matter what. In a memorial garden on Earth, a statue stood in honor of Ambassador O. He had died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 92, surrounded by his children, and he had never sought fame or glory. He had simply done what needed to be done. The inscription on his statue reads simply, "They asked us to kneel, we asked them to reconsider." Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it. Even members of council species, beings who had once looked down on humans as primitive pests, stood before that statue and wondered how they had ever underestimated this strange, stubborn, magnificent species. The stars had always called to humanity, and humanity had answered, not with fear, not with submission, but with the unshakable certainty that they belonged among those stars just as much as anyone else. The galaxy would never forget the day the Council tried to blackmail Earth. And neither would humanity.